Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News. Kia ora, Chewy.
Kia ora, Pat.
Doing well, sir? Doing well?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm a little bit worried that we don't have enough to talk about tonight. Very, very slow news day.
Yeah, obviously, whānau, we will be getting to the conversation around Newshub and what's happening there, because it's huge, it's massive. Yeah, we are literally going back to the 1980s. You know, national government keep wanting to talk about taking it back to the good old days, and I guess the news media is about to do that, Chewy. So we'll definitely be covering that off in the second half hour of this hour, the middle third of our 90-minute hour. Is that right, Chewy? Something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
And also there's some fireworks going off in the house today. Chloe was firing on all guns. Christopher Hipkins was going off. We might try and get some of that later on tonight if we've got time for that as well. But before we do anything, I've got something for people to write down to look at for themselves if you haven't seen it. Chewy, if you haven't seen this will make you cry. I'm just giving you a heads up. It'll make you cry. Look up at some stage, not now, watch us later, Jon Stewart and Dipper. Jon Stewart and Dipper. And when you find it, you will watch it. When you watch it, if you've got a heart, you will cry. Jon Stewart and Dipper came across my algorithm this afternoon, and I was sitting there going, in fact, I tweeted it out. I'm not crying, you're crying is the one I tweeted it out with. So Jon Stewart and Dipper, have a look as we after the show or tomorrow or whatever, or now, and pause us and then keep watching us in live stream.
Pause live.
Yeah. Well, I think you can actually. You can pause us and then do something else and then keep going. But anyway, look, we've got a full packed show, so let's not stuff around too much. Say huge thanks to our patrons. If you want to be a part of what we do, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. Bunch of new people in there for today. I believe Kiwi Scoot upgraded to be a producer. I think Robert's a new one. I think I mentioned Southern Rose the other day, but Southern Rose has been on for just a couple of days. We also had, I think, David Thompson and NZ Doom upgrade. Paul, Craig and Michael are new sign-ups. Deborah Rollinson is a new sign-up as well. In fact, I think some people signed up after the news about Newshub was released. And I'm not saying they're connected, but I'm just like, it's interesting because what we're not going to do tonight, let's be really clear, we probably could, but we're not going to kind of go, well, you know, that's what happens with media, and if you want to keep funding media like that, I'm not interested in doing that tonight. It's a sad day. Primarily for the people and their families who have lost employment and lost work, secondarily for the country, because much like a well-functioning government needs a strong opposition, a well-functioning media environment needs some big players. And we're going back to the 1980s when there was only one TV news at 6 p.m, which is actually kind of terrifying. Before we go any further, though, I just want to say as well, merch store is all open. New stuff is there. We've got those buffer shirts there, of course. That's from Professor Margaret Mutu, where she told allies to Māoridom to be a buffer. That's what that's all about. You just go and have a look yourself, bhnshop.nz, and the video is actually there to look at. Now, one other thing is you can get some merch at the moment that is actually branded with your name. You can see that you can get hoodies here and T-shirts there that are personalised. If you're going to buy one and you want your name on the back, make sure you select the personalised one, because the personalisation of them costs us a bit more. So therefore we charge a little bit more. I think we had a couple of people yesterday pick the normal one and then ask for a personalised. It's okay, we'll figure it out. But just a heads up now, if you want personalised BHN gear, the hoodie or the T-shirts, then make sure you select says right here, BHN personalised hoodie or BHN personalised T-shirt. That's what you need to do if you're going to get those. Right. Let's just rip, shall we? Let's get into it for tonight. I haven't tested my music with you, have I, Chewy? Let's just trust that tonight it's going to work. The sound's going to work.
It's been fine for so long.
But you know what that means, eh? Tonight's going to be the night. But let's just trust it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We hear a lot about this man out of the lips of Christopher Luxon. It reminds me of a Will Smith joke about keeping this man out my fucking mouth. I don't know, something like that. But I gave Harry Tam a call the other day if he'd come and talk to us and share some of his worldly experience and tell us what's going on from his side of the world. And he joins us right now. Harry Tam, good evening to you, sir.
Yeah. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora,
Thank
Harry.
you for joining us. Do you do that in the mornings? Do you kind of wake up and check your phone to see if Christopher Luxon's mentioned you the day before? Is it a daily thing for you?
No.
No. It might be a really silly question. In fact, let me just play 10 seconds of video here. This is Christopher Luxon the other day when he got asked about something you'd said.
You move on to the gang crackdown as well, because
sure.
yes, you campaign on it, great, you're delivering it, but I watched a piece on the news last night, and you've got, and you're pissing off the right people, to be honest. Harry Tam, he's brassed off, he's calling it a laughable PR stunt that won't work. What do you make of that?
Don't care about Harry Tam, my friend. Don't care about Harry Tam. Irrelevant.
Okay. Do you care
Harry
about
Tam
the Māori?
is on the side of the gangs. Let's be
Do you
clear
care
about
that. Do you care about the Māori?
So Lloyd Burr says that he's pissing off the right people, meaning you. Why is it that Christopher Luxon uses you as this kind of light to shine upon? Like, you're the name that comes out constantly when he wants to talk about gangs and the problem with gangs. Why is it you? Why isn't he just talking more generally? Why has he made you a figurehead?
I guess maybe better that you actually ask him about that. My own belief is that, there's a whole game that's going on that these guys are playing, and essentially it's the same game that Hitler played. You got to blame somebody, and you start off with people that are different from you, the Jews, the homosexuals, the communists, or whatever. And I think it's a similar game. Basically, he demonizes me because it suits that I stand out. I'm Chinese and I'm supposed to be a gang member and all the rest of it. And it attracts a certain amount of attention. And really, it's to distract the public from what really is going on with this government. I mean, this whole tough on crime rhetoric is really to create smoke and mirrors and so forth. Because, this whole thing about gangs, I mean, I jumped in, did a few figures today, and I looked at the New Zealand population in 2021 was 5.123 million, and in the same year it was supposed to be about 8,061 gang members. Now that works out to be a ratio of 1.5 gang members to every 1,000 New Zealanders. So the reality of anyone seeing a patch gang member is actually quite remote, unless you actually live in the hoods that they reside in, right? So you might see them driving past on a bike or in a car, occasionally out of shopping, but the reality of it, most people don't actually see gangs with patches. Where they see it is predominantly by the media. See, like every time there's a story about gangs, there's a patch, there's a gang member, there's televised videos, and then the politicians feed off that, and the media feeds off the politicians. So when you take a look at the numbers, in proportion to the population, it's relatively small. Yeah, sure, the numbers have gone up a bit, but overall, most New Zealanders probably don't see a lot of gang members with their patches on, or gang members full stop. So what we actually have here is what is known as a moral panic. So the whole issue is blown way beyond its proportion. And that suits this particular government because there's a whole lot of other stuff that's going on. For example, like, today doing away with the Māori health people, organisation, changing the RMA so overseas can come in and mine the iron sands of the Taranaki coast. Having pseudoephedrine sold in supermarkets because, if you go into your local Countdown or Woolworths now, there's a chemist there. And we all know that pseudoephedrine is the basis of making meth. And of course, we also know, the tobacco thing, which has been debated. And, and the politicians that are there have all had interest in them. As you know, I think Chris Hipkins was once a lobbyist for the tobacco industry. David Seymour and his connection with chemical what do you call them? Bloody medicinal companies,
I think you said. I think you said Chris Hipkins is a. Oh, I think you mean Chris Bishop, don't you? Chris Bishop was a lobbyist for the tobacco.
Yeah. Sorry, Chris
right.
and Chris. but
Too many
basically, there's a whole lot of stuff going on, and also if you listen to the rhetoric, it's sort of like tough on gangs, tough on crime, boot camps, and we all know the evidence is really clear. Boot camps don't work, but they don't care. You know, I'm not going to talk to Harry Tam. I don't care. I don't care what they say. Yeah. So when you sort of do a discourse of the language that's been used, it's the language of people that have power. And the people that they don't care about are the people that don't have power. So, and it's the same language as the colonizers. You know, we have power and we'll do what we like. Turn up there with a gunboat, pull out the muskets, and you can take whatever you want. And that's basically what's happening here. And all these other things are just sideshows to distract us from seeing through this government for what it really is. I don't buy it. And that's why they want to flog me all the time. Carry on. I've had it for 51 years. My skin's like bloody armor. Bring it on.
I'd like to ask you a real straight up question, because you said, I wrote it down while you're saying it, because I'm supposed to be a gang member. Are you a gang member? Like, I mean, I'm unclear on that. Are you actually a gang member, or are you just an ex-gang member? Are you gang adjacent? What would your status be in that world?
Oh, my status in that world, I think, is a respectful one. I mean, I myself, I don't dwell on it either way. I do what I do, and through what I do, I get a lot of respect. And people respect me for what I do, because my whole kaupapa for the last 51 years is working with this group of people who have come from a horrendous background. You know, same thing. If we're talking about victims, these are the victims. These are the people that come from a background of being abused, you know, and you know, it's amazing how quiet this Royal Commission has stayed silent for so long. I mean, you only have to read Dr. Elizabeth Thing's book on state care. This is the genesis of where our people come from. They're highly traumatized people that have never actually, no one believed them in the first place. You know, Dr. Elizabeth Stanley, you know, her book about people in state care, predominantly Māori, through the policies of urban drift, you know. And when you don't look into the problem and understand it, you're never going to get close to a solution. I've spent a lifetime living with our people, and through that, we get to understand people, and we get to try and make changes from within. And I think we do pretty well for the very limited resources we have. In fact, we're lucky to have anything. I mean, and even when we do get resources, look what happens, you know, this continual demonizing of Harry Tam, you know, like, you know, our rehab, we have a 95% graduation rate, which is outstanding.
Is that through the hard to reach organisation that you're running?
Yeah.
Yep.
We've got people that are 3 years clean now, got their children back from OT. You know, I mean, and our program is only an 8-week program, unlike some of the bigger ones that are better financed than us that run 8 to 12 month programs. You know, so that's what we do, and that's what I do. And what I try to do now as of age is to try and provide some thought leadership within our communities. And so whether I'm a gang member, whether I'm not a gang member, who the bloody hell cares? Is what you do, is how you behave. And that's the whole issue that I've always been on about. You know, let's not worry about what people wear or what their affiliations. Let's worry about how they behave and how we can change that behavior. And just taking their clothes off them, you know, I'm not sure whether that's the most intelligent thing to do. And I'm always so amazed that, you know, our political leaders, who are the leaders of our country, are so dumb. They think that if you take that cloth off that person, they're going to change.
Yeah.
Their behavior's not going to change.
Yeah.
And, you know, and to me, it's just, let's be intelligent about this. Let's not get out the old hates. I hate you and you hate me. And I mean, shit, there's enough of that going around already without us contributing to it. And that's what I don't do, and I think through that I get respect. And it's not what I just say, it's what I do, what I practice, what I live every day. You're in the trenches with our people, you'd be amazed the phone calls I get every bloody day. It's this and that. Can you help me, Harry? Dog's gone this way. I get a whole range of stuff, and maybe I've often thought about, I should keep a log of it all, And these are people that I don't even know. Most of the people on my Facebook page, look, mate, I don't know who they are. It's not that they don't matter; they do matter, but I just can't remember that many. And people will approach me with all sorts of problems, and they're not all gang members. The majority of the inquiries are non-gang members. But that's my life. That's what I do, and at the end of the day, I think when I was on that Jack Tame thing, I said, I just want to be a good New Zealander. I just want to make a contribution to our country, and I just happen to work at one of the hardest ends of this whole spectrum of need, and therefore it's just bullying, that's what it comes down to. This whole thing is like, all those TikTok videos that National had to do during the election campaign, cut through the chase. What is it? It's internet bloody bullying, right? Let's call them out for what it really is. It's bullying. And I've had it all my life.
I think the thing that jumps out for me, Harry, is with all of this rhetoric that's coming out of National, they absolutely don't want to engage with you or take any sort of feedback or anything that could actually help them accomplish something that they want to do, which is I guess less crime. Is they're completely ignoring the lessons of the past that go all the way back to where the mob came from, those broken Borstal kids. And that was all tough on crime of their day. And all of these attempts to be tough on crime throughout the decades have done very little to minimize what the mob's been up to, what Black Power's been up to, what the other various MCs throughout the country have been up to. It's never worked. But then when there's an engagement, I think there'll be a lot of people in your organisation that acknowledges that it can be a hard, unpleasant life, and it's not great for families and stuff like that. I've seen mob members that are very devoted parents, but they know the life that they're in. But if we shun these people and we go, you're just not part of society, well, they'll go, we'll just continue doing our society as we've formed it. So if you were able to engage, let's say we put you and Christopher Luxon in a room,
a locked room,
5 minutes, and you say, hey, look, Chris, here's the secret to making progress with the mob. What would you say to him?
Well, I'd just share with them my experiences of working with the mob, and I'll share with them the successes that we've had working with people, to me, you learn if you want to learn. Eh? Your mind's got to be open, yeah? And that's what I said before, the whole dismissive of anything that doesn't suit their narrative comes from a power position. I have power, you don't, right? I'm the Prime Minister, I have power, I don't need to talk to Harry Tam, regardless of how sensible he is or, what he may have to offer. I just don't need to talk to him. And that's what I mean. That it's the neo-colonialist attitude, It's like and it comes down in his world, and he said it all prior to the election, one of his first public statements, the bottom feeders. And that's his persona. That's how he sees the world. There's the top feeders and the bottom feeders. And he's here to serve the top feeders, not the bottom feeders, despite what he says he's here to serve all New Zealanders, but he won't talk to some of us, right? So you can measure the genuineness in this guy's language, right? It is what it is. He's a top feeder.
I also have to point out the fact that he said that you're irrelevant.
Exactly.
But you sure as hell weren't irrelevant when you endorsed the Labour Greens. That seemed to be very worthy of note when you suggested to people that were listening to you that you better get out and vote and you better get voting for Labour and Greens. That certainly provoked a reaction from them.
And look how many Greens got on.
Yeah, good point.
Hey, it's not that our campaign wasn't successful. It was actually very successful. It's just that Labor didn't have any decent policies for people to vote for. Now, I'm not even going to be popular with Labor now, am I?
Thinking about being locked in a room with Christopher Luxon. On that line, like if you were given like carte blanche to introduce some policy that would help in the area that you're working in, the hard to reach people, whoever they are, what kind of policies would you want to see implemented by whatever the name of the government is that would do something to help the group of people you're working with, the communities you're working with, rather than potentially harm them or isolating them?
Well, first and foremost, like I keep on saying, like myself, having been, a policy manager in government, when you develop policy, the first thing you have to do is have really clear problem definition. And we don't, right? And having clear problem definition comes about when you develop a really good understanding of the genesis of the problem that you're dealing with, right? And so and as you guys have already been on my company's website, you will see our framework. If you understand the literature around hard to reach, it always begins with engagement, right? And the reason why it starts with engagement, because basically social services aren't designed for this community. So if you think about the broader population of this country, the justice system, the social services, the health services actually work reasonably well, apart from the lack of resourcing or money or whatever, right? But the system in the main actually serves the bulk of the population. But there's a segment of the population that doesn't do so well, and you can call that group the disadvantaged, which you need to do a bit more. And that's like Māori service provision and all the rest of it. So you deal to the disadvantaged. And then you've got this relatively small group. It doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't work, right? And what that tells you is that the system is not designed for that community. So that's why when you look at the literature about hard to reach communities, it always starts with engagement. Why engagement? Engagement is getting to understand their needs and what works for them. And in our framework, we talk about hard to reach Māori communities, design, develop and deliver. So again, if you take a look at the Kahukura program, it wasn't your standard meth rehab program. It was a program that was designed by our own people and delivered by our own people. Yeah. And that's why you get the successes. I mean, after 51 years of working in this field, that's what I've learned. And I believe it is a good framework to work from. And those people that you're showing there, the majority of them, or a significant proportion of them, have now gone into tertiary training to be clinicians. Now, before Kahukura, they probably wouldn't have even considered it. We've got peer support workers who were the fire order at Kahukura. They're now enrolled in EIT to do certificates in addiction and so forth. Now, if it hadn't been for Kahukura, it would have just been another meth addict. Probably in prison, probably involved in organised crime, probably involved in violence. But now he's got a purpose. He wants to be a clinician. He wants to be able to help his bros and help their families. Now, that's the stuff that will come out in the evaluation when we actually get it completed. But that's the sort of things that we do,
So this is the thing that becomes incredibly frustrating. What I hear you saying is you are helping and pulling people out of the area that Luxon and his ilk are saying, these are the people we need to pull out of this area. That's what's frustrating, right? Because they're saying, so we're going to do that by, doing boot camps which as we all know don't work. The research shows doesn't work. They've tried it in New Zealand before, doesn't work. We're going to ban gang patches, like didn't work in Whanganui. In fact, Harry, we spoke to Chester Burrows just before he passed away, and he said very clearly to us that it's a great headline and it's terrible legislation. So this is the former police minister in the national government. You know, over in Western Australia, it's making some kind of impact, but also, you know, crime is moving to other parts of the country, and there's workarounds happening for it. So what's frustrating to me is we hear this government talking about, you know, they're going to spend money wisely. We're going to look at every single one of your dollars and we're going to handle it wisely. We're an outcomes-based group. Well, they say they're an evidence-based group, but I don't know about that so much. And then there's people like you who are giving those outcomes, who they're going, why would I talk to him? It's incredibly frustrating. As someone who wants the best, I'll say the word outcome. Me and Chewy always talk about what we want from legislation and in society is the best outcome. How do we get that best outcome? And it's like this government in the areas of gangs is going, well, I'm not going to look at the best. I'm going to do the way we like it. Not necessarily the best, just the way we like it. Because if we have to do it the best, then we have to acknowledge that perhaps some of those bottom feeders are the people that we need to rely upon to actually be the ones to do the work to get to the place we're telling society we're going to get to. It's completely frustrating.
I think it's actually worse than that. It's not only they don't want to know about it, they actually want to kill us off. That was the thing that he was saying. You know, when I get in there, I'm going to rip up every gang contract. You know, so it's worse than not wanting to know. It's intentional, and that's what I mean. So when you go through all the rhetoric and all that, see it for what it is. It's about a distraction. They actually want more people in prison, right? They've made that really clear, tough on crime. Now, let's also understand every consecutive national government have always brought in private prisons. So this is where this is leading to, because our prison system as it is today is already overfull. Yeah. The prison system cannot recruit enough people to work the prisons, right? So you change these laws so they become more draconian. The prisons are going to be absolutely chocker, right? So what's the answer? Oh, private prisons. Yeah, I'll put money on it. That's where it's going, right? So
Seymour's already said 5,000 new beds. I think that's the number he mentioned before the election.
Yeah. So where's the money coming from for that? Who does it serve? 100%. Because private prisons are not, the money doesn't come, it comes from New Zealand, but it doesn't stay here. It goes to some overseas consortium, you know, some multinational bloody, you know, penal industrial complex somewhere, you know. And so when you start looking at all this, this is about asset stripping of our country in many ways. And if that's not colonization, what the bloody hell is, you know? We really got to see it for what it is. You know, it's like Dylan, you know, he said in the song, he said, you know, I might not be the master, but I ain't no fool, you know. And the thing is that, you might think you're some dumb gang member, but I can tell you now, I can fucking see through this bullshit, you know. And the sooner that the other people of this country see through it, the better.
Do you think that's likely? Because it's unquestionable that National romped home this time around. So there's a pretty big hill to climb for people to see through this bullshit. And as much hatred as they put towards the left or the Labour government that's just gone out, that's a lot of bullshit to overcome before they see it for maybe what it really is.
Well, the danger to that is the breakdown of society, right? That's the danger. That's the game that we're playing here, you know. And I think it'll be a terrible place if we ever degenerate to that. But, you know, like we've had this neoliberal consecutive governments for 30 years now. And in that process, it's dumbed New Zealanders down. We're taught not to know our history. You know, like we talk about this housing shortage, you know, that we've been going on and on about. But if we understood where the housing shortage came from, it started when the white settlers came to New Zealand. Yeah. Māori didn't build houses for white folks, yeah. And then when you send 4 shiploads into Petone Harbour, then they're going to live. So we've had a housing shortage from the day of Pākehā settlement, right? And in 1933, I think it was, the first Labour government brought in state housing, because that's the only way you can provide enough housing, because the market will not provide. Market will provide housing for the rich folks, but it won't provide housing for everyone, right? So basically, it was market failure from the very beginning to where it is today. And if we don't understand the history and we keep on saying, do away with state housing, sell off the housing stock, that's why you've got so many people now sleeping on the streets, which I never saw when I was a kid growing up. That wasn't New Zealand the way it was when I grew up. And we've been dumbed down. We've been taught to not know our history. The whole concept of egalitarian society, the land of bread and milk and honey. Well, a lot of people don't have bread and they don't have honey and they don't have milk. We know that, but we don't understand why. Because over 30 years, that's like a couple of generations now that know nothing about having an award rate of pay that, you could live on. People, look, put it this way. When Samuel Parnell was a settler in Wellington and he refused to work more than an 8-hour day, right? Since that time to now, we've had IT, we've had, all this mechanization. We're now into, AI, right? So if anything, our working days should be shorter and shorter. But people now are working 16-hour days and still can't live. Their kids have to miss out school to go to work to support the family. So what does that tell you? It tells you the people that owns the IT and all that are not sharing that wealth. It's going to a few, and the rest of us are left to live on the crumbs. That's what's actually happening. But because, you see, my grandkids will not know about award rates of pay. They will not know about trade unions and having to fight for your conditions. When you take a look at industrial accidents and deaths, they have been going up and up for 30 years.
Yeah.
But again, we forget that in my day, you had a safety inspector on the job who was a union person, and he could shut down that job if it was unsafe. You don't have that now. You don't even have safety inspectors inspect the sites. So, the sooner we start talking about our history and reminding everyone what we've lost, the better. But, oh, no, that's something that so-and-so Muldoon did or whatever. That's how they kill it off. They kill the discussion. They kill the conversation. And people like me that reminds people what we lost are a threat.
Mm-hmm.
We like to refer to Muldoon here as the New Zealand's last socialist prime minister. And it makes me feel yuck every time I say it. But the more I think about it, the more it's true. I think you're exactly right. On so many things, it all comes down to history. And when we chop our history up into little three-year terms, and then it's like, well, it's the last government's fault that did this. We can't do this because the last government did this. And we don't look at these long-term systemic problems. Labour are a bit better at it than National, but they are all, you're quite right to identify that the wheels came off when neoliberalism came in. You mentioned, people not being homeless. I remember the first time I saw a homeless person, it was 1998.
Wow.
And I had to go to a bigger city than I lived in to see that. Now in Dunedin, I see probably 3 or 4 homeless people every day. And it's just like, what's going on? There's people that don't have a place to live, or they can't afford them, or it's market rents, or social housing isn't an option. It's bleak. And I think you're exactly right to sort of point out that hey, look, if we're going to lock them all up at the same time from the same people that had a little experiment with Serco in prisons last time round, and they're talking about privatization of a whole bunch of things at the moment. Softly, we don't want to scare people, but we're definitely talking about it. I don't think it's crazy to go, these are warning signs. And if we look at the history, we see the arrow that it's all pointing towards. And I think it's time to make noise, and it's time to listen to alternative voices, and it's trying to listen to people in different walks of life that are going, hey, look, here is my experience. It's not irrelevant because it comes from a place of truth. And so I'm glad that you're sticking your head up against the trench line and just taking flack and saying what you have to say, because it's still valid. I don't care if you had a patch on your back.
Exactly.
That's what you know.
Mm.
It's important.
Yeah, and to me, what's wrong about caring for other people? Hey, what's wrong with that? Hey, there's something terribly wrong when we talk to people like they're bottom feeders. Hey, isn't there something wrong with that fucking tone and that language? Jeez, if I had my way, he'd get a fucking slap.
Careful, Harry. The headlines tomorrow morning will be Harry Tam threatens violence.
What's a
Careful with that one.
Well, I'll slap anyone that talks that kind of language.
I mean, there's a lot of people out there that just do not understand gangs, and because it's not in their orbit.
Well, they don't see them.
I keep on.
They live with them.
I keep on reminding people that this is a society that those people created, because the society that most of us have doesn't work for them, doesn't look out for them, comes down on them like a ton of bricks. It's that replacement family for a lot of people that had just a shitty, broken upbringing. And when you treat those people like the enemy, what options?
Hey, I didn't make this up. Like I say, go and read Elizabeth Stanley's book. She'll, nice white middle class academic. She went and did the research. It wasn't something that Harry Tam just invented. But that's the reality of it. And of course, I guess it's acrimonious to some extent, because it highlights how our governments enable that to happen, and we were all part of that democratic process. And that legacy hasn't changed, as with OT. The latest ombudsman's report, it continues to go on. So we're now getting into the fourth generation of that dysfunction that's passed on and on and on, and with more prisons, more people, it will continue. So if the people of this country really believe what National's offering with all these extra laws that's going to solve the problems, I kid you not, it's going to make it damn sight worse, And I think people pointed out, prisons are the prime recruitment ground for gangs. So what, it just sort of beggars belief, really, doesn't it?
Harry, I think I know why Luxon has your name on his lips fairly often. Is because you're a threat. I mean, the way you're speaking, like I'd never met you before we started texting and on the phone the other day, right? And I'm like, who is this guy? What's he all about? I want to know more. You come across as a smart, articulate, connected, clued in dude who's well researched and well read. No, not big scary mongrel mob man, but actually someone who knows their shit, knows what they're talking about, and maybe has some answers for some of these questions. So you're a threat. So he has to demonize you. The right has to demonize you, because you could be a path forward that actually helps some of the problems that they're talking about but have no real solutions for.
Yeah, well, I don't intend to threaten anyone, really. I mean, I just speak my truth, and like I say, I have fantasies of wanting to give certain people a slap, but I never do it.
We started this conversation.
Thanks for the head swell. It's great already.
No, it's great. If you read the chat, mate. If you want the head swell, go back and read the chat afterwards. We started this conversation and got you on as well to talk about the legislation. So my last question for you is actually back to that. I want to know from your experience and from being in the world, if the government does pass this legislation banning gang insignia, what will the gangs do? What will the outcome be from that, do you think?
I don't really know, because like I say myself, I don't sort of place a whole lot of things on patches and all the rest of it. I guess it's like the frock for a reverend, isn't it? They wear a frock. That's what distinguishes their identity. And so when you start looking back again at the genesis of this, right? So when our people, whether it's the process of colonization that stripped Māori of their economic base, and then urban drift was the answer, bring them to the city to work in the industries. And then you had this process called the process of assimilation. So that's how Pākehā New Zealand was going to deal with Māori after you colonise them. We're going to turn the brown folk into just like white folk, and it backfired terribly. So in other words, the sense of identity was stripped away from these people. And when they become institutionalised, their identity was further stripped away. And I remember one time when I was organising a hui with the youth gangs in South Auckland, going back around about 2015, and Roy Dunn was the national president of the Notorious chapter, who I actually got to fund him to go and work with those youth gangs. And with this hui, we had Wali Homaha, the police come in and so forth. And I said to Roy, I said, do you think it would be a good idea for us not to wear the patches and to get the kids not to wear their colours? And Roy looked at me, stared me in the eye, and he said, "Why, fuck, I will." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "That rag that you're talking about, that's all that kid's got. That's all he's got. And you're telling me to take it off him? Get fucked." See, that's what we don't know. You know, when you've lost your identity and stripped away from you, you form your own identity. Yeah. That's what you have in terms of subcultures. Yeah. And so that subculture becomes the predominant culture in that person's life. So when you're talking about taking away patches and that, why did these gangs form? Why did they have colours and patches? Because their search for identity that was stripped away from them. And now we're going to strip them off them again, just like when they legislated to stop Māori speaking Māori. It's the same thing. It's colonisation all over again, all right, for the same group of people intergenerationally. And that's what it comes down to.
Harry, it's been an absolute pleasure having you tonight. Anytime you want to come and have a chat, mate, our door's open. Anytime. We'd love to talk to you anytime. And next time you're in Dunedin, you've got my number now. Give us a call. We'd love to catch up.
Yeah, will do.
Appreciate it. Anything else, Chewy, before we head off?
No. I'm just thank you so much for coming on, mate. It's a valid perspective, and we're glad to help share it around.
Cool.
All right.
Cheers.
Thanks, Harry. All the best.
Kia ora, mate.
Awesome. Right. Should we get to some of these chats and stuff that have been in? A bunch of people have put late fees out there, so thanks for the guys who did that. Kooky Nick, thank you for that. I always get stuck with this name. I'll go Xantra, like Xantra. The hashtag bottom feeder gang. And Peter said something similar. I can see why Harry is such a danger for National. Yeah, because
he knows his history.
Yeah.
Like I mean, that's one thing that came through really clear, and I'm so glad to have this sort of reinforcement of like all of the problems we are having today have roots in decisions that were made in the past. And unless you look at those things and go, well, hey, this is what caused it, then you just start laying the same paving stones down to make the same wrong decisions all over again. Like none of this stuff happened overnight. Like none of it. And that's what Luxon doesn't get. And that's what who was it that we were talking about the other day that said you could swap your gang patch for a pack and save uniform?
Oh, that was Brooke. The lovely Brooke.
Brooke.
Be cool,
Brooke,
kids.
Obviously
be cool.
Obviously, Brooke has had a lot of lived life experience with people that are in the orbit of gangs. What an absolutely tone deaf, fucking just stunningly stupid thing that was. But yeah, they don't get it. Pack and save doesn't replace a lost culture. It doesn't give someone a sense of self-worth. That self-worth comes from in here.
That's such an interesting point, about stripping culture once, then stripping identity once, then stripping identity again. Yeah.
I'd replace it with a corporate culture instead. Grim.
Or replace it with prison uniform. That's probably unfortunately the reality thing that we're talking about. But you guys know we love being the dumbest in the room, and that was a beautiful example of that. So we thank Harry for coming on again. It was wicked. All right.
And look, I have to say with this, nobody is saying that you need to agree with the gangs or even like the gangs. But I think it's important to understand where they came from and the role that they form in society. Like There's no magic wand that is going to disappear the gangs and disappear people that don't feel that the society that we live in represents them, serves them, or understands them. And if you don't see that, you'll find something that does, or you'll create it.
Yeah, I like the point you were making as well about, you're trying to, if they're not welcomed into society, whatever that is, then you form your own society. And now if you're saying they can't have that society, then what? Fucking hell.
Yeah.
Right. Anything else, Joe, before we move on? I don't want to cut you short of your
No.
rants.
That's I think I've hit all my points.
Maybe we should get some ginger ale. Could be a product for us. Could be Chewy's ginger and ale. Ginger ale. Could be I don't know. Just playing with stuff there. Hey, there was pretty massive news that broke today, I think late morning, that Newshub is being closed down in its entirety. Well, what they're saying is there's a proposal that Newshub will be shut down in its entirety. What that means is Newshub will be shut down in its entirety. There's even talk already about, people in charge being open to other proposals, but the workers of Newshub have gone, no, they're not. So there's a proposal that Newshub disappears on the 30th of June. And let's have a look at some coverage, because it's devastating on so many levels. And one of the levels, in and of itself, is it's devastating for us, not us BHN, but us as a society, because we need as many media outlets as we can have to, like, sometimes this is a Newshub exclusive because One News hasn't picked up on this story or whatever. The other thing that's really important, and I don't know if you've ever noticed this, Chewy, but when people are talking about newspapers shutting down, right? If you ever watch things like MSNBC, CNN, even Fox News, that kind of stuff, so many of their stories start with first reported in the New York Times. Yeah? So there's these other things about media outlets. We use them. We get to use Newshub's product to talk about issues of the day. Now, I'm not saying that because it'll be harder for us. I'm saying that different media outlets have different focuses, and what they do is they bring a different light to something that then can be expanded by other people. So media companies doing news are so much more important than just the news they provide. It's often it's the first step up a ladder of that story that then gets picked up by other groups, by bloggers and by, podcasts and by other news agencies. And it gets delved into further and further and further, and it spreads it out. So losing a news media agency of this size, 300-ish people, is devastating, obviously for them, for the people who it's involved, but for the country. It's a really, really, really scary moment. 1989, they've been around since. We've had two 6 p.m. bulletins, 2 news agencies working in television in New Zealand since 1989. We are literally going back to Muldoon and Longy era with our news service, our news ability. It also goes to show, True, why publicly funded news is so very important. So very important to keep it an RNZ and a TVNZ, or a TV1 in particular, publicly funded, because if it's going to come down to just the commercial coin, then others are going to fall behind. So actually, I know it seems a bit ironic, but I've got the TV1 story. Obviously, TV3 also led with them talking about the story, but I wanted to do the TV1 story to give a different outside perspective. I am going to show some clips about, from TV3 as well. So let's have a look at the story as per the news tonight.
Staff just told more than 3 decades of journalism is set to stop in a matter of months.
Thinking of all of our colleagues at the moment.
Colleagues in the field were told to drop their stories and get back to the office. At its Auckland headquarters, it was 2 security guards and company-wide meetings.
Just shock, really.
Their jobs set to go in June.
If you're not obviously watching it, picking it up, that's a Newshub person being hugged by a Newstalk ZB person. So there are genuine, because we know each other. I know I've been interacting with several of the people from Newshub today that I know personally. It's bigger than just them as well. It goes into all the other agencies. TVNZ, this story tonight, actually, this reporter, we're not going to show the clip, but at the end of the story, he goes into the studio with Simon and he says, in 1989, a whole bunch of people left TVNZ to go to TV3, and that's the only reason I've got a job. So that reporter got a job because TV3 started up, because he was filling the gap of someone who left TVNZ to go to TV3, even though it's a very small industry. Everyone knows everyone.
We've looked at many options on how the newsroom could potentially transform. The reality of it is the scale of the downturn in the TV advertising market has been so great, we haven't seen a viable option other than what we've announced today.
Newshub's owners are a multi-billion-dollar international.
Well, good evening.
But they say for Three the Channel to survive, Newshub has to be axed.
I don't believe there's anything that the network could have done substantially. No, there was no other way.
This is Brenton, but he was running NZME when I was working for Newstalk ZB. He's been working in this world for a very, very long time. He then became, I think, the CEO of New Zealand, of All Blacks, the All Blacks as well, I think.
This is going to go. And television, free-to-air television, isn't as profitable as it used to be.
Three's last finances show it losing tens of millions of dollars in a year. It never asked the government for help.
And they did say things were not going too well. They didn't ask for any assistance in terms of funding.
Warner Brothers Discovery has never actually reached out for assistance. It's not something that they felt that was helpful.
And
now TV3 reported that slightly differently. TV3 came back after that and they actually said that's not true what the minister said. Let me play you that bit from the 3 News update.
Newshub can reveal Warner Brothers Discovery does not agree with the minister's version of events.
Yeah, absolutely not true. So there are 2 parts to that statement. The first part around there was nothing that could happen. We were specifically talking about cordia relief. We were talking about the proposed Google Facebook Digital Bargaining Act. And my comments to her were that neither of those things are in place right now, and neither of them would address the scale of the revenue drop that we've had in the market that we talked about today.
Now, I'm going to explain for you guys as well what the whole Google, Facebook digital bargaining thing is, because when you have it explained to you, you kind of go, oh, I was actually talking to someone, I actually can't say who, but I was talking to someone fairly senior in a media company in the last couple of weeks, and he was a person who was presenting at that to the government about this, and he explained it to me, and I went, oh, I didn't understand it entirely. So when we get to the end of the story, I'll also explain that to you as to where some of the revenue is going, but this is back to TVNZ now.
It's unlikely there'll be any now.
Well, it's up to each individual corporation, as it is in every other sector in our economy.
Hundreds could lose their jobs, faces that have been here for years, and those just starting out.
You aspire to be like those people, and then you saw yourself at Three, and to know that there's probably potentially not a future there. So
it's an amazing team, and everyone's just been working really hard over the last couple of months, and I think we'll just continue to do the same.
Tonight, that team's reporting on themselves. Jobs on the line more than ever, and a deadline they don't want getting closer.
There you go. So that's that first part of the story from TVNZ. I got some other things to show you. There was some footage from inside the meeting, and the boss man there, I think it was Glenn Kai, is that what his name? Genuinely seemed, because I mean he lives in he's an Auckland-based person. Obviously, probably not his decision. It's people internationally seem pretty genuinely cut up about it.
And today, an email advising of significant changes. It was sent to staff 48 minutes before they were informed the axe was falling.
This is a terrible announcement. There is no sugarcoating it. And I wish I could be standing up here with better news.
Warner Brothers Discovery New Zealand boss Glenn Kine made the announcement.
I've been very proud to be part of this organisation and part of the newsroom. Nothing prouder.
I don't think maybe that'll. I mean, will that be better for the people who've just lost their jobs? I'm not sure whether it will or whether it won't. But he obviously is pretty cut up about it as well. Couple of other things. Well, actually, wait, Chewy, you can jump into, because I don't want to lose track of the original story.
I just want to hit a couple of points on this. Like you mentioned, this is a very small country, and TV is a very small industry.
Media in general is very small.
And the news media part, that is also a very small. All of these people know each other. Now, when I talk about how small it is, Samantha Hayes was studying at the same place at the same time. She was studying journalism. I was studying broadcasting. So there we go. There's a direct link there. I know heaps of people that have worked for MediaWorks. I know heaps of people that have worked at TV3. It's gutting to see these people lose their jobs in an industry where they're going to really struggle to find somewhere else.
Well, there's something we talked about with Today FM. Remember with Today FM, I went, the Tovers will be fine and the Lloyd Burrs will be fine. Well, Lloyd Burr's just been made redundant again because he's doing the AM show. Now, the difference now is when Today FM shut down, we said clearly that it's the producers and the people down there that are going to be, but there was only about 20 people. There's 300. There's 300 people now going to lose their jobs. There are going to be some of those people on JobSeeker. Not sure how Mr. Luxon's going to actually respond to that by getting them off as quickly as possible, but there are going to be a bunch of media people because there's not 300 jobs. I mean, will Mike McRoberts be okay? Probably, but you've probably got 7 to 10 stars. I hate that word, but high profile people. And those positions aren't just available in other stores. You had 2 on Today FM. Yeah, they'll be incorporated somewhere. You've probably got 10 massively high-profile people, and then you've probably got another 10 below them, and then you've got all the people in the back rooms and stuff. That's just this is not going to be like those top people are fine. Some of them won't.
The second point I want to acknowledge is, and I've seen a lot of comments, and I see a little bit of it in our chat now. People that are happy that it's happening because they're either too left or too right or just not the sweet spot for them personally. They're missing the big picture. Now our news media is purely one organisation.
Our television news media,
TV, is one organisation. And sure, you might not get your news from the TV. You might get it from us. You might get it from the radio, whatever. But lots of people still get it from TV. And if there's not money going into reporters holding politicians to account, holding local bodies to account, holding businesses to account, then there's a lot of stuff that can happen outside of the spotlight.
Yeah.
And that is going to be a detriment to this entire country. For Luxon to go, they're a private company, they know how it works. How many private companies get bailouts because they're in the public interest? You know, he used to run one.
Yeah, true.
Don't you know? So I mean, for him to just flip that out there, like it's absolutely no consequence. He's probably going, fantastic. That's halved the amount of shows that I'm not going to go on. I think there's really big downstream effects for just like how many news stories in the past 6 months did Newshub get to first, Pat? There's quite a few.
There's several. Yeah, plenty.
They did some fucking good work in the last 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
And yet there's personalities involved with Newshub that we don't necessarily agree with.
Okay.
But
fair.
But they're part of it. They're part of it. They're part of getting different points of view, different angles. And now that's gone. And I think even if you're quietly going, fuck them, I think there's serious downstream effects that we're going to be chewing on for ages, because nobody's going to, like TV news, as I said, it's not profitable. It's expensive. You've got to employ a lot of people to spend a lot of time finding their stories. And that's why it's on the chopping block. There's still going to be a TV3. There's just not news. So I hope you like Married at First Sight, The Block, fucking naked rape boy island.
Basically anything that Warner's or Discovery is making. Look, the other thing about this story, it has actually made me, I came across a clip today, I'm going to play it for you, not to be deriding of this person, but there is something to do with the media, right? They haven't quite got the idea about moving digitally yet. And I even heard it in some of the questions from the reporters today. This is Tova O'Brien asking a question of the Prime Minister. The question's more important to me than the answer. Have a listen.
One of the biggest problems is the fact that audiences just aren't tuning in on any kind of platform, really. We're seeing shrinking numbers. What role does politicians undermining trust in journalism and in journalists have to play in that? Like yesterday, we had the Deputy Prime Minister talking about the woke media inside the House.
Well, as I've said before, media actually have to, if there's a trust challenge with the New Zealand public from media outlets, that's a collective decision that they need to make to ask questions about why aren't they connecting, why aren't they actually being able to build sustainable business models. There are outlets that are actually working really hard at that and have got different approaches to it, different business models.
I have no doubt that they are doing that, like as a collective, as an industry, we are doing that. But also, what do politicians need to reflect on the language that they're using? Because in the House, like I say, we have the Deputy Prime Minister, using words like the woke media. Do you need to take responsibility for something?
Well, I just say to you, the media, no politician will appreciate the media coverage that they get or the media's, appreciation or assessment of them. I get that. But media play an important role in our democracy, something that should be incredibly well valued. In the case of the Deputy Prime Minister and many other politicians around this place, they all have private and public views of what the media are.
Is it appropriate for this to be calling out woke media in the House?
He's completely allowed to express his...
So the couple of things about that. The first thing is Tova misses it completely. Newshub isn't going bankrupt. Isn't cancelling. I'm pretty sure it's Tova. If it's not, I withdraw and apologise. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. This is definitely Stuff. It's on Stuff's feed. So I'm pretty sure. Now you've made me question myself in the middle of a rant. Yeah, look, it's on Stuff. Okay, maybe it's not Tova. I thought it was. Let's go back to the question. It's not got anything to do with the language of the politicians. They are not helping. Peters is not helping to foment that distrust, but $100 million has been taken out of the market to do with advertising. Is it Mikey? Why is it on Stuff then? Okay, whoever. I withdraw and apologise. Then Mikey missed that. And the other thing that Mikey missed, if it was Mikey, I'll call him Mova, because then I've got both covered, is this bit, and I'm just replaying it, the words. One of the biggest problems is the fact that audiences just aren't tuning in on any kind of platform, really. We're seeing shrinking numbers. That's false. That's not true.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, we're very little, but we're a platform and we're growing. Other internet groups out there, other independent media out there are growing. So it just made me think that the questioner was also missing the thing. You could have said any mainstream, sure, shrinking, gotcha. Television audiences shrinking completely. I don't know. The only time I really watch live television free to air is when it's the cricket, or the news if I want to see what's happening on Newshub that night. But I think, I wonder, this is in my head, I wonder it's going, have they missed the mark with this? Because they're now kind of going, well, what are we supposed to do? Everyone's shrinking. It's not true. The model that the mainstream media organisations are using, that model is shrinking. They need to change their model. I always talk about my mum, when she was little, she used to talk about the Iceman. And I've told this story before. The Iceman was literally a guy who came around with a block of ice to put it in the bottom of the safe where they stored it was their fridge. And then at some stage, refrigerators started to get used, so the Iceman's job was obsolete. Look at Kodak. Kodak developing film disappeared when digital cameras came around, pretty much.
Blockbuster!
So what the mainstream, what mainstream media has not done is moved to what they need to be doing digitally. I'm not saying that like terrestrial television or those brandings are dead, but I'm saying they are going down and have the equivalent coming up to regain some of that revenue. So even though the audience for the TV had gone down, other audiences had gone up. So I was intrigued by the question, right? And the question was talking about everything's shrinking. It's not true. Lots of digital things are growing. Everything mainstream might be shrinking. Actually, you know what? Radio is not shrinking, but television mainstream is. I just wanted to have a chat over that, Chewy, like we just have.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just replying to someone in the chat saying that we're a long way from journalism, so we can't replace them. Absolutely, we'll be the first people to. It'll be a cold downhill when you say.
I love it when people try to take the piss out of you on Twitter and they go, "Nobody knows your name," and I go, "Yeah, I know."
We're just two dudes with some reckons.
Never claimed that anyone did.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, yeah, maybe the format, the way people are consuming their information is changing. And, you know, the idea behind the 6 o'clock news, right, is the entire country was sitting down for dinner. What a great time to have the news on. And then we tried late night news and that sort of thing. So, yeah, the ratings, which is, of course, what advertisers pay attention to for the 6 o'clock news slot, is probably tanking as people die off, or they consume their media in a different way, or they time shift it, or whatever. I know I haven't listened to free-to-air broadcast television for over a decade. I would have watched the debates on TVNZ's app or TV3's app, that sort of thing.
Yep.
But advertisers don't listen to that. Like, legacy media and advertisers really haven't got a handle on the digital world at all, because you can't show the same numbers as you used to be able to with legacy media. So all they see is a decline. And it's just, people still want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And they still want to know the news. And in a world with so much free entertainment or free information, it makes it really hard to put a value on it. Like, some of you very good people in the chat have clearly put a value on BHM, which we're endlessly appreciative for. But by the same token, that doesn't give us enough pull to put Christopher Luxon in a chair and really turn the screws to him. Yet. Yet. We'll get you, Chris. Maybe
with Newshub gone, we'll have more of a chance. Welcome tonight to all those Newshub viewers, by the way.
But yeah, it's stuff like that, and I think for the government to be so glib and go, well, they're a private business, that it's a business decision, that sort of thing. I think that channel is just going to be flooded with reality bullshit and entertainment, or advertising disguised as entertainment.
Infotainment.
Yeah, and we're not going to get the information part of that.
Yeah.
And the people that have the skills, that have been doing that job, where are they going to go? Are they going to go overseas? Are they, there's not enough to absorb that many people in that industry looking for jobs at the moment.
Yeah.
Big hearing Newshub.
It sounds like someone's got a swollen testicle. Oh, my big hearing Newshub. So, I wanted to explain one other thing too, because I really just got it figured out, because I always used to hear about these media companies bleating on about Google and Facebook, and I'm like, but so Facebook shows your story, people click on it and they go to you. I don't quite understand what the big deal is. And someone who is a senior person in media within the last couple of weeks explained it to me. This is what they're fighting, right? And what I did was I just Googled how many Newshub staff will lose their jobs. This is what it comes down to, Chewy. What Google's doing is it's scraping websites so you don't have to go to. So see here, I go to Google and I want to know how many Newshub staff will lose their jobs. And on Google, it says up to 300 jobs are expected to be lost as one of the biggest commercial media. And that's the scraping from this story.
Yeah, so you got the answer, and you didn't.
It'll be highlighted. Whatever I just did. Normally, it gets highlighted in orange for the bit you just did, or whatever, which is not going to be. So what they're complaining about, which is completely fair, is that Google is actually making it so you don't have to go to the Herald story. If you don't go to the Herald story, the Herald doesn't get the click through. They don't get the advertising spend. They're not as successful. But on Google, although I think I paid not to have them, you still get your adverts and stuff on Google. So Google gets to scrape the site, put it up there as a banner, and you never have to go to the page. So that's what they're talking about when they're trying to fight back on the Google Facebook digital bargaining. That Google is making money off news of the NZ Herald here, and NZ Herald's seeing none of it because they're not even getting the click through. So I got educated on that just the other day. So I thought I'm probably the dumbest person in the room. There might be one or two other people out there who might need to know what it is, but that's what it's about. It's about you not having to go to the news site because Google has scraped the information you've asked for and put it on their own page, Joey.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it's like we talked about the Iceman, we talked about Kodak and we talked about Blockbuster. They're all really good examples of your industry changed and you didn't adapt. And sometimes that can be fucking painful. And I think that's what we're looking at here. To lose Today FM and Newshub in the same 12-month period.
And they were the same company, remember? Because the radio guys basically sold off the television thing, but that was MediaWorks with all of them, and then television got taken off, and then the MediaWorks news product still failed. Remember, it's the news product, and now the Newshub news product has failed, or the 3 News, the TV3, whatever they're called.
And if we're going to trust our news gathering and our information gathering to things like Google, then you're putting information at the risk of the algorithm. So we trust Google to serve us the answers that it wants, that we want. We want the truth.
Yeah.
But we know that the search engine algorithm was more likely to deliver you news that you want to hear.
Or what's popular.
Or what's popular, or what promotes the most engagement, which could just be some of the most toxic results out there.
Yeah, blood on the floor. That rates.
And
conflict rates.
That is not good for this country as a whole. Whatever side of the left-right divide you're on, that is not a good thing. And that is why people are freaking out about this. So, yeah, if you're on the side that's going, well, go woke, go broke, you're going to go broke as well. But
it's also not true. Go woke, go broke is not true. They never say it about Taylor Swift, do they? Who's woke, and she's about to wrap up a tour that she's going to make $1 billion on. So
I love that.
They only get to use it when it's something that is assumed to be left-leaning, and Newshub isn't. And the reason, we've seen that in our chat tonight, some people saying, like we always talk about, bless his little heart, Mr. Bridge, you know, being an ACT supporter, it would appear, we don't know. And then people are going, well, they're left. They're not. I mean, the best thing you can get when you're working in the media sometimes is one night you're being called a voice piece of the left, and the next night you get called an alt-right lunatic. That means you're just actually, you're providing something for everybody. And Newshub is not go woke, go broke. They're not woke at all. Whatever that stupid word is. I think that's the first time I've ever used that word. I kind of threw up in the back of my mouth.
It's a fun hashtag to search sometimes to see who's threatening what giant multinational, multi-billion-dollar company. Like my favorite is when it's Microsoft. Like Xbox promotes something about pride or inclusivity, and people are going, go woke, go broke. And it's like, fucking Microsoft?
Apple.
Going woke or going broke.
Yeah,
Get the
Apple.
fuck out of
Nike.
town.
The Colin Kaepernick stuff went through the roof after he got let go for kneeling. It's a thing that people say when they have an appearance of the cafe where women got paid an extra 8% than the men in the store, and that didn't work somewhere in Melbourne. Oh, look, anything that works. It's not. It's when you get to tag it to something that you think it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
anyway. Hey, I'd like to get to these last couple of clips as well, but you finished now.
One thing as far as a nightmare scenario goes, because we like a nightmare scenario. To date, Rupert Murdoch hasn't got his sticky paws on our news media.
Yeah.
Wonder what assets are up to buy.
Oof. Don't like that.
Fox News NZ, anybody?
Yeah. Oof.
There's your nightmare scenario.
Oh. Okay, let's have a real quick look where, tonight was always going to be a long show. That's fine. Let's have a look at the debates in the House. There was a couple of really interesting moments, and it's all about the anti-smoking bill going through. Chris Hipkins, I'm not sure where he found them, but he found a pair of testicles somewhere and he inserted them to the right place because he was going bananas today. And he made a very good point about his I'm not spoiling too much, but his grandmother smoked because she didn't know. His parents knew something. And how come you guys in government don't know these things that they learned about smoking? Have a listen.
Would have allowed me to do that. But the thing is, my grandmother at that point didn't know better, because the overwhelming evidence that now exists didn't exist 40 odd years ago. My parents were more aware of the risk of smoking, but my grandparents were not. So that was their excuse. My question to the members opposite is simple. What's your excuse? Because the evidence is now overwhelmingly clear. 12 people a day in New Zealand die from smoking-related illness, and this government wants to liberalise the sale of tobacco. Where is your moral compass? What is it that has happened between pre-election and post-election that has forced you to completely abandon the platform that you campaigned on? Why is it that you now believe that liberalising the sale of cigarettes is an appropriate way to raise $500 million in revenue every year so that you can fund tax cuts that will disproportionately benefit the wealthiest New Zealanders?
Can I interrupt the member and remind the member not to bring the speaker?
This is very good.
I am not, Madam Speaker. In fact, I made it very clear that these were questions to the members opposite. But thank you for doing the government's bidding by interrupting my flow.
Excuse me, the member will stop.
No moral compass whatsoever.
Excuse me. Do not bring the speaker into your debate and do not disrespect the chair. I will ask the member to withdraw and apologise.
Do not disrespect me by interrupting me with a point that is not relevant.
The member will resume his seat.
Oh, there you go. So there's a bit of argy-bargy. It's like, gosh, who is this? Where's this all come from?
Where has he been?
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. Like, I hope the Labour Party have employed someone to just hide in Chris Hipkins' office, jump out, smack him in the face before he goes into the house. Get him angry. That's what we want to see. These guys have rammed through some of the most regressive, they've abandoned all of this work around stopping smoking. Do you know one of the things? That you can't have a tobacco store next to a school. That's fine. Yeah. That's fine now.
Yeah.
Like, just insane.
We actually had Chloe booked on to come in tonight. I was actually a bit kind of like, how are we going to juggle this? But she said yes. I was going to have her at 9:30, but they've been debating in the House tonight, so they pulled out. So we'll probably have Chloe next week. That whole conversation that they had earlier in the week about there's not enough time on breakfast, so she was going to come on. So hopefully we'll get her next week. She doesn't have quite the same anger and shoutiness as Chipkins, but as she is wont to do, brings out the research and the evidence. And how can you argue these points she makes?
This is the debate on clauses 25 to 42 stand part.
And our democracy in this position to have this debate right now, I don't think this is the right one. I'm sorry, I had it lined up, but I don't know where it went. Maybe it's this one. Hang on.
It is that such violence and harm is being done to the health
very good.
Of
about
our
the smoking.
people.
E te mangai.
A call on Chloe Strawbert.
E te mangai, tēnā koe, tēnā koutou te whare. Mr. Speaker, my question for the House is, who asked for this? Because freely and frankly,
what a
looking
question.
through the Select Committee submissions and the public outcry that we've seen in response to this track of agenda from this government and the support that we saw when this world-leading legislation came in, is that the only entities that we can identify who are asking for this legislation to go through the House today are New Zealand First and the tobacco industry. And Madam Speaker, if that doesn't give you a clue of who this legislation serves, then I do not know what does. Madam Speaker, the next question is, why is this legislation going through under urgency? Because we've had a lot of back and forth over the last few days about the fact that this government is ramming through an agenda under urgency without any regard for convention or public input, the Select Committee processes that would usually occur when legislation is before the House. And the argument that we've frequently heard in response is, well, there was an election. And an election therefore means that, with all of the things that we went out and said that we would do, well, we can just do that without any regard for parliamentary scrutiny, without any regard for due process or the usual protocols of this place. And Madam Speaker, that kind of leaves us with the outlying question of whether it's the case that this government sees that simply because there's an election every 3 years that we can revert to authoritarian rule outside of that. Because Madam Speaker, that does fall as a question to the feet of this government. Because what we have here is a piece of legislation that, as so far as we can identify, has only been asked for by the tobacco industry and by New Zealand First. It's going through under urgency by virtue of the fact that that exists as a commitment in the New Zealand First National Coalition Agreement. But the next question then becomes, what does this legislation actually seek to achieve? Because I've got to be honest with you that I've heard some really Orwellian and completely contrarian, contradictory statements from the government on this. They're saying that we're reverting back to a track by which we were already seeing a decline in smoking rates. That is what existed prior to this landmark legislation. But the really simple question for them, which they have not been able to front up to and be honest with the New Zealand public about, is that this legislation must, by virtue of the evidence and the advice that they themselves have commissioned, will result in a slower decline in rates of smoking in this country. What that means, Madam Speaker, by matter of fact, is that more New Zealanders will die as a result of this legislation going through the House. That is a fact. That is the evidence. That is a fact. It is unrefutable. And I dare any members of the government to stand up and say that, to say the opposite. Because what this bill does is slow down the reduction in smoking rates, therefore meaning that a product that kills 50% of its consumers will continue to do so while there are slower rates of people coming off of smoking.
There you go. So, I mean, I know we often come in and out and chat about stuff, but like, what else can you add? It's not questionable. All the research already says at least 8,000 more people dead by 2040. And like we've been saying for the last couple of months, month and a half, the two biggest, happiest entities for the first 90-ish days of this government are petroleum and big tobacco. Now, I don't think that's really even challengeable either. They're the two commercial entities that will be the happiest because
nobody's asked for this.
I think that's a great question. Who's asked for this?
Who's been agitating for this? It hasn't been from the public. Like, there's been nothing about this. You've seen what has been shown to be an AstroTurf group from the taxpayers union of dairy owners wanting to keep selling smokes because their profit margins will tank. And apparently all dairies in the country will disappear. But again, that was an AstroTurf group set up by the Atlas-backed taxpayers union. So that's not true. And then we've got a health minister, associate health minister.
Trying to take excise, you're talking about the excise tax off cigarettes?
Yeah, taking excise tax off. Yeah, associate health minister plugging for big tobacco and worried about the tobacco industry, the twilight years of the tobacco industry in New Zealand. Is anybody sticking up for the tobacco industry?
Oh, the poor tobacco industry.
It's not a New Zealand-owned industry. It's not a New Zealand-owned business. It's a big multinational corporation whose aim is to sell a super addictive product that kills its users.
Half of its users.
Like, it's a massive drain on our healthcare.
Yeah.
Like, there's no benefit there at all, and nobody's asking for this, and even smokers would be probably the first to agree if smoking's not that good, and maybe we shouldn't let people do it. So we've been on a multi-generational trip to stop people smoking, and everybody's has been reading from the same book that it's a good idea, and then we get this government, this three-headed fucking monstrosity that goes, no, put the handbrake on. There is so much conflict of interest, there is so much collusion, and there's so much just what's the word? It's just people are getting paid for this.
Tomfuckery?
Shit fuckery, to borrow a term from Juice Media. Like, it's mental. I don't understand it. And someone said, what's the speaker's problem? The speaker's problem is that she's overdue for her fourth lightning strike. That's right, her fourth one.
I don't know the goings on of Parliament very well, or the debating chamber, but I didn't hear him invoke the speaker or her or whatever. So I mean, like, the part of me kind of goes, where was that chippy? But it wasn't there, and I guess that's their job now, is to hold the government to account. And you got to say, when it comes to tobacco, they it's a little bit like we were talking last night about them pushing things through in the 100 days just because they said they would, an arbitrary number of days to put things under urgency. The reason they're doing that is because they've said they would. So the reason they don't want to not do that is because Labor might be mean to us. That's the only reason. So it doesn't matter how many people it impacts with bad legislation. At least Labor won't be mean to us. So it just seems that they're, I don't know, but thin-skinned and also incredibly, they're like thin-skinned but Freddy Krueger at the same time. Thin-skinned Freddy Krueger, killing and wiping everything out in front of it, but incredibly worried about what everyone's thinking and saying about them.
Yeah. The word I lost, because my brain's too angry and it's screaming, was corruption. So that's the word of today. Yes. Like it's something, it's a word that I don't really like throwing around because there's such a high bar. We are approaching that bar that it's corruption.
Yeah.
The conflicts of interest are too strong. The links to lobby groups are too strong. The degrees of separation.
Yeah.
It's a straight fucking line for some of these people. They're in the family. It's insane. And these guys were lashing Labor for some dumb fuck investment conflict of interests. It deservedly so. But again, it's always projection. It's always projection. Who's friends with the tobacco companies in this century? For fuck's sake,
big dope, big meth, because they want them to be entry in through somewhere else. Big alcohol. Alcohol probably is. All right, hey guys, it's been a good show. Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night for another edition of Big Hero News. Don't have anything planned for tomorrow night. Normally Thursdays are a bit more loose. We'll probably fire open Discord and jump you on in there as well. Remember, in fact, I'll probably do an order this week of the new merch, meaning it says in here that we're going to make an order at the end of next week, but I've got a few orders that came in yesterday. So if you'd like to get your merch sooner rather than later, hop on to bhnshop.nz. Of course, the buffer t-shirts and hoodies are there. If you're not sure the story behind the buffer, just go to bhnshop.nz and watch the video that's in there as well. Also, the BHN shop merch, the personalised stuff. Remember, if you want to have it personalised with your name on it, you have to select one of the ones that's personalised, or else it'll be a straight hoodie or t-shirt coming to you. bhnshop.nz, it's a way that you can support us and also get some of our hot shit out there. And also, as it says along the bottom of the screen, I mean, not to pull these two things together, but what I realised, Chewy, was when they say 300 people being let go of, if the average wage in New Zealand is $93,000, average salary is about $93,000, and it's going to be more than that because, presenters are going to get hundreds of thousands of dollars. But if you just go by that, you're basically at something like $27 million a year just for salaries for Newshub. 27 million just for salaries. Doesn't include anything else, and that's a minimum. So you can see, I remember telling you guys the story about going to Today FM and walking into the MediaWorks front office. In fact, you and me went there for a chat as well, didn't we?
Yeah.
And that front office with
absolutely.
with that big wall and stuff. You're like, this is a $150,000 lobby. Maybe more, who knows? But this is $100,000 they spent. This lobby, probably you could build a house with what they spent on this lobby. And that's the thing about, I guess, heritage or mainstream media, is they have these budgets behind them that have to go bananas for them to survive. And if you take $100 million out of the advertising market, which is what's happened, then there's less to go around. I still wonder about TVNZ. If TV1 had gone ad-free, I still think that was the best idea. TV1 should have gone ad-free and maybe subscriber only, like as in we all pay a broadcasting fee, and TV2 and 3 could stay commercial. It's a way of sharing that revenue around and also providing more niche products on a channel that's more like the BBC model. Totally think they should have done that. They don't need to do that now. TVNZ will now just be creaming it because they'll have no competition. Their numbers will maybe not double, but will go up by 30-40% watching that news each night, because there's no competition to it at all. Anyway, I guess what I'm saying is we run a pretty lean ship here, and one of the ways you can support us is to head to bhnshop.nz, and the other way you can support us is to head to patreon.com/Big Hero News and help us keep doing what we're doing. Now, I reckon, Chewy, we can get our budget for salaries to about 15 million. I reckon that's all we need. It's probably half of what the newsroom what Newshub needs.
I've said it before. I'd love to see Tova O'Brien's coffee budget. I think that could keep us going.
All right, guys. We will be now. Remember, Jon Stewart and Dipper. You got to look up Jon Stewart and Dipper.
Oh, why are you making people sad? We've made them angry.
Do you know what it is?
I googled it and I saw the headline and I was like, no, not today.
You should watch it.
Not today, Satan.
You should watch it.
I'm not watching that.
Jon Stewart, Dipper. It will make you sad if you've got a heart, or if you've ever had a dog. It'll make you sad. Made me sad. I wasn't crying, Stu. You were crying. Wasn't me. I'm not crying.
Luckily, my dog is going to live forever.
Yeah,
so I won't have to deal with that.
All right, team. We will speak to you super soon. In fact, tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hearing News. Stay safe, everybody. Come back tomorrow night. Bring a friend. Hooroo.
Mā te wā.